1 FM Lagos. We're joined by Gbholahan this morning. Hello, Gbholahan.
Good morning, Valentine, and good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. Find him on Twitter at Mr. G Quest is his handle. Funmi Odude is joining us for a Thursday morning. Funmi, good to see you.
Good to see you. It's a good morning. It
Good
feels
morning.
like a forever, right?
Yes, it does.
Welcome. Great
Welcome.
to see you, Fumi.
Fumi's handle on Twitter is at Funmi Odude. Lagos will start the conversation, but first remember to send us messages through WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. 0809 444 On Twitter, we're at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. We're streaming live on YouTube, so you can watch and drop your comments on our YouTube handle. It's Smooth981FM Lagos.
All right. Yes, we will be going straight into our first story, and that is I'll run an inclusive government. Buhari pledges from Vanguard newspaper. Now, both of you, because obviously this is a big story. Yesterday, like we mentioned earlier on, we had an in-depth discussion with some analysts during Lagos Talks 91, generally looking at the election. So, what's your take on his speech? This is a speech after receiving the certificate of return.
Well, in my opinion, I think this is expected from the president anyway. I mean, is now elections are all over now. He's now the president of Nigeria. Whether 15 million people voted for him or 11 million people voted for the opposition, the other party. Right now, at the moment, now the battle is over, or the elections are all over now.
No, they're not all over. We still have governorship coming up next weekend.
No. We're talking with respect to presidential anyway. We're not talking about governorship.
It's not completely over.
Of course.
Says the lawyer.
So for now anyway, at least he's been given the certificate of return. Now he's now the president now, and he's promising us now that he's going to be running an inclusive government, which is a move away from the comments that we've heard in the past then, where he made statements such as people who gave him 5% of the vote versus those who gave him 95% of the vote. Now we're looking at a president, I would assume, has learned or realized his mistake now, and that he has seen that it's very important to run an inclusive government, especially when we look at how divided the country has been over this election as well too. I mean, when we look at the elections and the results as well too, we look at the states and how APC has been able to win a lot of the votes in the northern section, and while we're looking at PDP also winning in the south as well too. There's been a lot of divide, and now is the time to actually look at bringing people together as at the moment. I don't know if
I quite agree with Bolan. All around the world and not just in Nigeria, we're beginning to deal with a lot of division, and we're beginning to see the importance of having a leader that can bring people together with words. We're beginning to understand the power of having leaders that their words actually have an effect in what goes on. And so it's whether you're happy that he's there or not, these are the kind of words that we want to hear. And not like the one, and particularly in Nigeria, where our division cuts across so many things: political divide, ethnic divide, and our own division usually results in we're quick to ignite violence and all of that. So yes, these are the kind of words that we need to hear. It's very important at this time that we have leaders that are careful with the kind of words that they use.
Brilliant. All right, thank you so much. We're moving on to the next story. This one is from the Thisday newspaper. We've heard from the president, elect and incoming president again, and this time it's from the presidential candidate of the main opposition party in the person of Atiku, who says this is the worst election in 30 years. True or false?
Well, I mean, it's when we look at the situation on ground. I mean, has a clearer picture of what has happened all across the nation. I actually speak from my own area anyway when I voted, and from reactions of others as well too. We do know that, of course, when the elections were conducted on Saturday, there were issues with the way and manner the elections were conducted by INEC. Anyway, we're talking about how prepared was INEC, how efficient were they in conducting the elections, what time did they get to the polling units as well too, and what time did they close, the polling unit as well. So there were some instances where we heard that there were places where the elections carried on till very late, and the counting also carried on till late as well too. Where there were also incidences of insecurity in some parts of the country as well too. Of course, this is not the fault of INEC, but it has plenty to do with the security operatives that we have in the country. So right now at the moment, there were quite a lot of discrepancies over this election, and in my own view as well, to the way I look at it, when I compare the 2015 elections with the 2019 elections, I will definitely say 2015 looked a lot more credible. It definitely, I believe that there was a lot more done in 2015. And I would also ask as well to the process, what progress have we actually made from 2015 to 2019? I would actually say we haven't actually made much progress. It seems as if we have actually regressed a little bit, in my own opinion. Right. So when I look at the article here, Atiku was talking about the situation that he experienced as well. So we're talking about voter suppression in some PDP strongholds like Akwa Ibom, Delta State, Abia, and Benue. He was talking in reference to places like Akwa Ibom, where he felt in 2015 there were a lot more people that voted for the PDP compared to now. So there was a 62% drop in voters that voted for the PDP. Then you juxtapose that now with certain areas like Borno as well, to where you saw an 82% rise in the number of people that voted, and they voted for the APC. So he was asking the question, why is it that in places where there is a lot of insecurity in those areas, you seem to have a higher voter turnout than places where seem to be a lot more peaceful or so? So it raises quite a lot of questions. And of course,
putting things in perspective,
yes,
we understand that the northern part of Nigeria experienced more voter turnout than the south.
Yes.
So I mean, basing it only on one, well, comparatively.
No, if you look at statistics, and then this is not, no matter who would have won, there's no hiding it. We have problems with the way we do elections in this country.
Right.
Point blank. We have issues. And looking at statistics that some even observers have reeled out. If you look at the failure of card readers, areas where card readers failed, leading to disenfranchisement of a lot of voters. Forget just voter turnout, even those that turned out. Look at the areas particularly where the card readers feel therefore their votes didn't count. Look at the areas where logistics didn't come on time.
Security
and
didn't even come at all.
Yes. So when you say that, I feel like I would have gotten more, I feel like there was a deliberate attempt because I look like those are my strongholds. I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, you might say that it's okay, but I mean, our elections are not near. In any way.
Well, just in response to that, ACF and Gbholahan Ese have urged him to accept the results and take on the role of statesman. So just
that's a quick message here from Emeka Vincent from Ibejuleki. He says, this is the first time the President Buhari should correct the mistakes of the past by building a detribalized and united Nigeria. More messages here. Please add your names to your messages so we can take them. Stanley Ejugo says, electronic voting is the way to go in Nigeria. That way, human interference will be minimized. In Nigeria, even INEC, he says, might be compromised, but let's not toe that line. But Lagos, be reminded that we're streaming on Facebook as well. Just type in the search box Smooth 981 FM Lagos and follow the trend.
All right, this one for me, very interesting story. We spoke about senators a few days back, but now the report here in Premium Time says 11 Nigerian incoming senators facing corruption probe. The report details the 11 senators and talks about what they're facing in terms of corruption charges. What's your take on this for me?
Okay, so this is not particularly new. We had a number of them from the 8th National Assembly as well. Our leaders always seem to have that, and then we cry political witch hunt. But this is more, should I say, a moral and systemic issue more than anything else. And it stems also from the fact that we tend to focus on the big elections, the presidents, the governors, and forget. I know for instance, we had a lot of discussion about my area where there seemed to be no credible candidates from other parties apart from the main political party. And people were like, I want to vote for somebody else, but I don't even know who. I don't know the name of the opponent of the other candidate. So for those that are interested in politics, especially from the not too young to run demographic.
Yeah.
Let's start from, these places. Let's start from House of Assembly positions, House of Representatives, senatorial positions. And another factor to this, which you cannot remove from it, is how expensive it is actually to run. So when you say that, it almost feels like if you have not, the way politics is played in Nigeria now, it almost feels like if you have not stolen money from the government, you don't have that kind of money to spend.
Yes.
With the amount of money that we actually spend on politics. So it also goes back to what we cap, how we the amount we cap on campaigns and how enforceable it is. I mean, we hardly go back to ask these people, how much did you spend on campaign?
Where did you get? What's the source of the money? Now, something else some human rights lawyers and activists have spoken about is the fact that, the length of time that it takes to convict. For instance, Oju Zokalu, his case has been in court for many years, and in this period, he has run for election. He has won. He's a political godfather. You're a lawyer yourself, so
yes, we are working on that. We keep working on that. I mean, to be honest, yes, it's a major problem that we've had, and we've had legislation to actually curb that. So legislation that ensures that criminal trials continue till the very end, rather than travel through the appellate process and comes back and is hung and what have you and what have you. For example, I mean, former governor of Oyo State, Ladoja's trial that had stayed forever and ever was finally concluded, albeit with an acquittal, but concluded nonetheless. So it's something that is actually being worked on. We're hoping we continue to work on it to make sure that our criminal process the length of time is shortened.
All right. Let's backtrack to a few messages so we don't run out of time before we take them. Shegun says, when campaigning, the opposition always ran to the UK or US government for guidance. Now that the UK government has congratulated the winner, all the opposition listen. Will they listen to their masters? Sean says, MI from Akoka says, great soundbite, almost a parallel with the I belong to everyone and nobody's speech. He has another 4 years to bridge the gap because many things like our cohesiveness have gone south and North good for Nigeria.
All right, Unbundle INEC now. Revisit Uwais Report. NGO advises the federal government. This NGO is a governmental organizations network, and they've asked that to encourage that INEC is broken down so that it's more efficient. Now, we spoke about the inefficiencies of INEC during this election in some areas. What's your take on this, Funmi?
Okay, so very quickly to what he says. He says that the commission as presently constituted has too many tasks. They do voter registration, they monitor political activities, they print materials, they conduct elections, and he feels that all of these tasks reduces the effectiveness and efficiency. And it's similar to what the Uwais Report said at the time. The Uwais Report actually recommended that 3 other commissions be created: the Political Parties Registration and Regulatory Commission, who would focus, as the name suggests, on political parties registration, monitoring the activities, monitoring political campaigns and all of that. Then a second commission we created, the Electoral Offences Commission, dealing strictly with electoral offences. And then the third is the Constituency Delimitation Commission. So those were the 3 commissions that the Uwais Report suggested INEC be unbundled into. As it stands, as it is, we're all agreed on the point that, I mean, INEC is not doing a great job, despite how much cost to run elections in this country. But at the same time, do we want to spend more money? If this commissions, if INEC is unbroken to these commissions, I do believe that it will create some form of effectiveness, because and then each commission is targeted to the area in which it deals with. So the commission that deals with political parties, we know that they do. Because I wonder if INEC really follows up, if they really, we're talking about campaign financing and they're tracing the source of the funds. If INEC really has the time to go through the auditing and of the financial statements of political parties, which is one of their major functions and all of that. So if they are truly broken down, there would definitely be more effectiveness and more efficiency. But then we're dealing with cost as well. That is the only down point.
And Austin's remark ties with what you just said for me. Austin says, good morning, Q. In comparison with other elections, do not forget the monies were not released on time. Reacting to the INEC stories. Well, let's move on to Thisday newspaper for this next story. Stock market capitalization down by 85 billion naira. And this one is for you. Stocks listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange declined further Wednesday as investors appeared to not to be enthusiastic about the outcome of the presidential election that was won by the incumbent President Muhammad Buhari. In their recommendations, they made a few suggestions, also suggesting that the president should intensify efforts at tackling corruption and insecurity since they negatively impact on the economy. In Gbholahan, we've been chatting about this a couple of times in the past 2 weeks. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, well, the negative sentiment continues on the stock market. I mean, as soon as at Tuesday, when the directions was heading towards President Muhammad Buhari winning the 2019 election or so, we started seeing the trend going southwards negative. On Tuesday was 0.71% loss. Same thing followed as well too on Wednesday as well too. We're seeing that loss carrying on as well, and we don't know if that sentiment is going to carry on all throughout the week. But at some point anyway, things should start to normalize.
What would you perceive this incumbent or the present administration? What would you say if should they focus on this? It will make a positive impact on the capital market.
What do you mean?
What do you think might be the policies that you could suggest to the present administration right now?
Well, I mean, when you look at it, of course, the last 4 years hasn't really been good economically. There hasn't actually really been a lot of policies that has stimulated a lot of growth. We're talking about 2018, where our growth is still at below 2% or so. So when you look at it, of course, what the government needs to do is formulate policies that would actually stimulate growth. And when we're talking about growth, we're talking about sectors that have the potential of growing. We're talking about the creative industry. We're talking about agriculture. We're talking about manufacturing that stimulate the growth. So, but when we're according to this report, Moody's is also talking about the issues that we're currently facing as a nation, and this was by the vice president of Moody's, who made a statement to the Thisday newspaper, and he said the issue that we will still face in Nigeria will still be the issue of credit. When we're talking about credit, and the reason for this as well is because, of course, the economy isn't growing, and when the economy isn't growing, government isn't generating enough revenue. And if government isn't generating enough revenue, then how are we supposed to pay back what we owe, or how can we afford to pay back what we owe? Then the other thing is also that he's also talking about as well too, is the rate of our borrowing. Of course, over the last 3-4 years, this government has borrowed heavily, and they're borrowing heavily to focus on infrastructure. So going forward as well too, we're still going to look at this government they will still continue to borrow as well, and borrow heavily as well. So the cost of borrowing has been going up, and so therefore we must look at ways at which we can stimulate the economy so that the government can generate a lot more revenue.
And maybe review and analyze the economic policies. And just for clarity, Moody's is a business and financial services company, and they offer financial advice and counsel to governments around the world. Well, we'll look at some of your messages, but let's move on to this next story very quickly to touch on the victory celebration and the effect in some parts of the country. New Telegraph has this report. Buhari's victory celebration, 3 killed, 2 shot, policemen injured. Take us through this story. Gbholahan, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, according to this, when President Muhammad Buhari was declared the winner yesterday, apparently 3 people, not and 3 people were killed in Kaduna, and this happened when there was a clash between the APC supporters and the PDP supporters, and we also had 2 people who were shot as well too in Osun State. This was in Ilare Jesha, Obokun local government. I mean, the elections are over at the moment now. I don't even know why we should be having violence also, whether before an election or even after the election. At the end of the day now, what we should be looking at is how are we going to move this nation forward? What government got in stock for us in terms of economic policies, in terms of creating in terms of security as well too, and so many other things that we should be looking at the government doing. So I ask that we maintain peace in the nation, and it's also important as well too that the party officials call out instruct their party members as well
To be civil.
and ensure patience as well too.
Thank you, Gbholahan. Daily Times has this next story, but we'll take a few messages before we move on.
All right, messages from Twitter at Smooth981FM using the hashtag FreshiePress981. We have here Aaron Capture One asks, why not talk about the deliberate disenfranchisement by Lagosians themselves who collected their PVCs and refused to vote rather than talking about more votes in the north than places? That's another thing that came up with regards to people not voting. That was from Capture_1. Lekki247 says, I'm still wondering why people think a free and fair election can happen in Nigeria, a place where we are already used to the security forces abusing their power, broke down doors of innocent judges, etc. So breaking down. And then Princess Abigail says, I wish this election will help us focus on creative ways of running an election. I'm deeply saddened by the process.
For me, we have our next story from Daily Times. Federal Accounts Allocation Committee 660.368 billion naira to federal government, states, local governments for January. How does this make you feel?
Well, we must move on. Governance is a continuum. Some people are working while some people are campaigning. So
Right.
yes, we must move on. So as we usually do, our 3 tiers of government have again shared the money. The breakdown of what was the total revenue was, like you mentioned, 660 plus billion naira.
Yes.
The way it was shared, the federal government received 237 plus billion, representing 52.68%. The different states received 120 billion naira plus, representing 26.72%. All the local government councils received 92 plus billion naira, representing 20.60%. The oil producing states received 41 plus billion naira, representing the 13% derivation revenue. Then they also shared the value added tax, the 3 tiers of government as well. The federal government received 15 billion naira plus 15%. The states got 50 billion naira plus 50%. Local government councils received 35 billion naira plus, representing 35%. The revenue generating agencies such as Customs, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Directorate for Petroleum Resources also received a total of 17 plus billion naira, which is cost of collection.
Yes.
So yes, the money has spread again. It's how we continue to hold our government accountable to how it is spent.
That is very important. Very, very important for us to watch. Not be distracted only by the elections. Well, the election is a good distraction because it's something that we need to focus on. It shouldn't be distraction, but also at the same time call the leaders, those who are still in power, to account how they use this money. Let's move on to this next story. Textiles. Smuggling turns factories into event centers. According to several reports, they've shown that the country's comatose textile industry arose due to preference for importation of textile materials into the country at the detriment of local ones. Earlier in Business Express, Rotis and I were discussing how the textile industry is suffering largely because the attention is not being paid, not just by the federal government, but private establishments. But looking into this story and in the details, your thoughts, Gbholahan?
Yes, just as you mentioned, anyway, this was a report, executive summary report about the Nigerian Economic Review by MAN, which is the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, and they were given a 2018 report about the textile industry facing a lot of challenges. Also, one of the challenges that the textile industry is facing is, of course, the issue of smuggling. We know how smuggling has really desecrated a lot of industries in Nigeria. I mean, just going down to the borders alone, you will find out that there are quite a lot of items that are often smuggled across the border between Benin and Nigeria. We're talking about rice, talking about textiles as well too, as one of it. And when we look at it, of course, in those days, several years ago, maybe 20, 30 years ago now, textile industry used to engage and employ so many people. It used to be one of the highest employers of labor, but that's not what we're finding out as at present, because they're bedeviled with a lot of issues. One of them, as I said, smuggling. The other is, of course, the issue of debt. And a typical example that was given here was given about Amcon, who's taking over a company by the name of Nigerian Braiding Manufacturers Limited in Kano for indebtedness to the tune of over 1 billion naira or so. So, of course, not only are we talking about the other issues, we're talking about debt as one of the issues as well. And why do they have so much debt? The reason why is obviously that we're obviously not competitive enough in terms of production. Of course, when you look at the infrastructure deficit that we have in the country, we're talking about power, we're talking about roads. So it's difficult. Security as well too.
Basic things would largely reduce cost of production.
Absolutely.
We see some companies moving the country and going to neighboring Ghana to set up their factories.
I mean, of recent, I read of one of these companies that produces baby diapers, shutting down the operating plant in Lagos, and this is a very big company as well too. And I mean, we're seeing this time and time again. And then the question is, what's the government doing about it, and what's the government going to do about it? We're talking about electric power, we're talking about the infrastructure that is needed, roads, and also finance as well too, because how competitive can you be when you're borrowing at the rate of 30%, and you go to other countries borrowing at 6% or less? It's impossible to compete.
Excellent, Gbholahan. Thank you. Let's very quickly touch on this last story from New Telegraph. NCC MNOs meet service quality KPIs. They said despite the pockets of complaints by subscribers to the telecoms, the mobile network operators in the country met their key performance indicators, KPIs, and quality of service last year. And in the report, we see several checks, or rather standards, that are used in the KPIs to apply to that. Funmi, it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on this.
Yes, very, because we're out of time.
Yes.
Okay, so for call setup success rates, for drop call rates, for standalone dedicated control, channel congestion, and for traffic channel congestion, NCC marked telecoms pass mark. I break it down. What this means is that for the past 12 months, they claim that 98% of the call setup has been successful. They claim that the drop call rate is less than 1%.
Somebody's rolling their eyes in the studio.
Massively rolling my eyes.
That all the
my experience.
They say all the operators performed well as they recorded less than 1% drop calls in the period. In the last 1 week, I can tell you the amount of drop
yesterday.
calls in the last 1 week.
Yesterday.
But you know,
does the rhetoric match with real life experiences?
Well, that is what the president of the National Association of Telecom Subscribers is saying. He's saying that the NCC looked at this from the technical point and not from the subscribers' point. And so, looking at it from the technical point, they would, based on the huge number of mobile subscriptions in the country, they feel like the percentage of errors, which would relate to a large number of people, but due to the huge number of subscribers, they will calculate that the percentage of errors is minute.
The margin is low.
The margin is low. And then they say that some of the service quality problems that we have might be due to the quality of phones that the subscribers are using. It's nice that NCC is even doing these quality checks, but I mean, this is far from the reality of what subscribers are facing.
So, for me, would it be wrong for me to suggest that what I would like to see from the NCC is use this media, I mean, I'm talking about telecommunication channels, to send broadcast messages, not broadcast messages, SMSs, requesting for survey reports from the users themselves?
Yes, but like I said, the report, they based their report on strictly technical grounds. It would be nice for them to also conduct a subscriber survey, like you suggested. It doesn't even have to be through our telephones. It would be nice for them to conduct a subscriber survey. Yeah. We should matter much more than.
Yes, we should. Big T says, let's remove sentiment here. The economic indices in 2015 is much better than now. Our credit rating and foreign reserves are much lower now. Even the security situation, though slightly better, is still far too dangerous. After 4 years, we can only talk of trader money and empire. It is shameful. Lagos, thank you for your messages. We do hope to take some of these messages inside of Lagos Talks 981, so we'll keep them here, but we'll touch on them much later. Special thanks to our analysts for coming in this morning. Gbholahan is at Mr. G Quest on Twitter. Thank you, Gbholahan.
Feels like I'm in a new class, a new student in a new class.
And Funmi, thank you for joining us this morning. You can find Funmi on Twitter as at Funmi Odude.
And Gbholahan, I'm Mr. G Quest. All right, that's all we have at the moment. We'll go on a break right now. When we come back at 8:15, it'll be time for us to look at we'll go through some entertainment news. We have a special guest, so you definitely want to stay tuned.
Invest where money never sleeps.